I'm going to try this mic. If you can't hear me, let me know. I'm excited to be here. Oh yeah, we'll come back to that. I just want to thank Jessica Green and Julie Swallow and Chip, who spent all this time teaching us how to teach this class. How many of you had a formal class in your training on how to teach at the college level? Look around, it's very few. I certainly didn't. I think we had one that had the title, but it was all theory. And so I never was trained on how to teach, and to sit down for a semester with these three great individuals and learn how to teach has changed everything I do. Now, I did some of the things, but not very well, and I didn't have names for them. And now I have names for them and something to tap into. But teaching the what do we call it? I always call it the belonging class, Univ 101. It changed me as a person and how I teach. So I just want to show you, this is me my freshman year. It was a bad senior picture then. It's a bad senior picture now. It hasn't changed. I sat down with one of my friends who helped me put my schedule together, and I literally said to him, who is staff and why are they teaching all of these classes? In chemistry, in PE, like literally. Now I had a sister who went to college and my parents went to college, but you wouldn't have known. My parents, at least on both sides, one branch, were first generation college students. But something that really changed me is forming a community in our dorm. So Chris Kutry's here. If you know him, he's in this picture. And I think I texted him the other day. I said, why aren't you in this picture? And Trip Meredith at BYU Idaho said, I think I took this picture. So, but I grew up in Colorado, and my social life was like most people in Colorado, and most of my peers drank a lot of alcohol every weekend. And I think I knew one person who didn't drink every weekend. So that put me in the designated driver mode a lot. I remember sitting with friends as they cried in their alcohol-induced crying about their friendships. And by the way, it was really fun. I just went to the bathroom, and there were two guys in there, and I don't know if they didn't know I was there, but he said, dude, how can you not see it? And the other guy said, no way, she's totally into you. I can see it every time I look at her. She looks at that way, everyone, bro, she's totally into you. What are you? And she was waiting outside the door. They're in some group. I thought, this is why it's fun. This is why freshman 101's fun. I didn't say anything. I wanted to say something, but I didn't. So we formed a friendship group, cross wards, just being there in the dorms, but for the first time I had belonging. I liked my friends in high school, but I was never really one with them. I was always on the outside. And so that was huge to me. I belonged to a group of people at BYU. And in those days, you may relate to me, you just spent time calling them on Christmas break. You know, the dial phone, and you'd call your friends at their parents' house, can't wait till you get back, right? A second thing that changed me is when I learned how to belong to BYU. I took a class from Don Marshall in the humanities department. And I honestly thought he was crazy. He'd say things like, I'm reading 7 books at once. That's, how can anyone read 7 books at once? I can't even read 1 book. For this talk, I think I'm reading 9 books right now. There's a couple that I forgot, like I'm 200 pages in and forgot, right? But he required us to go to an opera. Needless to say, I'd never been to an opera. He required us to go to an art exhibit. He required us to go to like 11 different things. And I did them on campus because they were free, and he opened a whole new world for me. I engaged in parts of campus I didn't know existed. I was a sports broadcasting major. And it changed the way I saw BYU, and it changed the way I saw my relationship to him. And then my story's not unique, but I had a Book of Mormon class, and for the first time I actually read the Book of Mormon. I remember coming home and saying to my mom, do you know that this scripture's in there? And she just listened. Do you know this is in there? And then she said, yes, I did know that. Can I share my favorite scripture with you? And I said, sure. And she shared Helaman 5:12, which is, now my sons, I want you to build on the Savior. But the gospel of Jesus Christ came alive to me through the Book of Mormon. So for me, I think I learned to belong to people in the BYU community that changed me. I learned how to belong to BYU, and then I learned how to belong to Christ, and that changed me completely. This is a little video that was made for those first 5 sections. I want you to listen to what they say about belonging to BYU, belonging to each other, and belonging to Christ.
Going to my first class, and it was in the auditorium with hundreds of students, and I was like, how am I supposed to ever meet anyone or make friends?
In my junior college, I didn't make a lot of friends because I didn't have that sense of community there that I really didn't know that I needed until I came here.
I think coming in as a freshman can be kind of scary. You don't really know what you're doing. And so it's really nice having the familiar faces to help each other succeed.
This new class is an opportunity to get a jump start into what it's like to be a part of the BYU community. And so a huge aspect of it is building belonging. And so really showing the students why they're here at BYU and why this is a unique opportunity.
We talked a lot about what it means to belong and as freshmen, as children of God.
Because BYU has that combination of spiritual and secular learning, it's such a unique place to invite the Lord's work into our education and into the rest of our lives.
I think this class helped students see the importance of connection. The assignment that had the biggest impact was to go as a group to an event on campus.
Our class made a group chat, and anytime that someone was doing something, the whole class was invited. We had a study group together, we went to devotional together.
We focus on building a Zion community here, and then other things like resources on campus to help you with your academics or your mental health and how to be a disciple scholar.
Knowing the aims and the mission of BYU, it really gives motivation and a reason for your learning. Our professor also taught us to lean on Christ, to rely on Christ for the things that we feel we're failing in or the things that we can do better in, to always rely on Christ and to make him the center of our lives.
God really blessed me to be in these classes. They help students to feel like they're a part of a community and that they mean something, to help them find their light. It's really nice just knowing that you are here for a reason.
At the end of the semester, we decided to have a group picture together that we called our family photo because we have that bond. If everyone had an opportunity to be in a class like this, I think BYU will be changed forever.
Okay, just grab someone at your table and circle up. What's something that the student said that stood out to you or a visual image that stood out to you? Okay, I'm going to give you 1 minute. Ready, go. Okay, so the folder I have on my laptop for this class still is called the Belonging class. It's right by the folder of all the personal stuff I'm not allowed to have on my computer anymore. It's side by side, but the Belonging class is kind of how I think about it. And I was talking with Rick Gill about it, he said, really what you need to talk about is covenant belonging. I found 2 quotes from Elder Gong that I thought were so powerful when thinking about how to teach classes at BYU. I want to focus on this phrase: by divine covenant we belong to God and to each other. Then the key phrase for me is, it's not possessive. Belonging gives roots and wings. It liberates through commitment. It enlarges through love. And I'll talk more a little bit about how you have to frame this with students in today's world, that any form of restriction is oppressive. So belonging could be seen as a loss of freedom. Another thing Elder Gong said is, covenant belonging gives us place. Isn't that what every student wants? Covenant belonging gives us place. And the slides will be available, so. And to belong to God and walk with each other. I love that phrase. To literally walk with each other. The way President Reese has talked about it is becoming BYU. The way we're going to become BYU will require us to sharpen our students' focus on their covenantal belonging. And I love this last phrase, which has to do with our contributions. It's not something that's given. You can't give belonging. We'll talk more about that. You create belonging. And we each have to make a contribution. Okay. So we're talking about covenant belonging, and the first thing I want to talk about is covenant belonging to each other. This is the Surgeon General's report from last year on the social epidemic of loneliness and isolation, and the primary scientific writer on this is Julianne Holt-Lundstedt from the psychology department. She's the primary principal. She's the principal scientific writer. I think we all know it's needed like never before. I think we all have a sense of the lingering impact of COVID, which I see as the defeated acceptance of disconnection. The defeated acceptance of disconnection. It's not that students want to be disconnected. It's just what they do. For example, I had a nephew on campus, really trying to help him connect with others. And I said to him, who do you sit with at lunch in the Cannon Center? And he said, I sit by myself. Why do you sit by yourself? So I can catch up on my YouTube videos. I said, you did not come all the way from across the country on your father's GI Bill to watch YouTube videos in the Cannon Center. But I think the acceptance that I'm going to be alone, I'm going to be disconnected is what we're struggling against. And I just want to say something about belonging. You see from both sides, those that are in the in-group and those in the out-group, a misconception. The in-group believes that the out-group has to insert themselves. If they want belonging, they better do something to be involved. And the out-group often thinks someone needs to invite me. Neither of those work. You have to create something together. And you have to go across barriers. And you have to go across artificial and real barriers that prevent us from seeing and caring about each other. So just a couple things from this report. This is not from the heart of COVID, by the way. The very end data point is in the middle of COVID. But you can see that in all of these ways, connectedness was decreasing, in all these ways. This is, for me, the chart that caught my attention most in the 83-page report. That lacking social connection is as predictive of premature death as, or more so, than smoking 15 cigarettes daily. Social isolation is bad for our mental health and our physical health and even our longevity. So part of what's trying to be accomplished, I believe, in this class is forming connections, belonging, community. So there's three main components to social connection according to this report. And where can we help? We can provide mentorship and we can provide social inclusion. This is the interesting phrase I picked up at a training last week from Elder Suarez. This generation needs to feel things in their heart. We can't just tell them what to do. So we have to create experiences where they can connect with each other, okay? And we'll talk a little bit about how we did that, and I'll show 2 video examples from students in the class. So you all know that belonging in school settings, even high school, is linked to positive outcomes. I won't spend a lot of time on that. There's a really interesting article in the Chronicle for Higher Education, Sethi and Hogan in 2021, that talks about how to make your teaching more inclusive, an advice guide. I would recommend that you start with small, sustainable changes in how you organize your class. I don't think personality changes are required to be able to teach this class or other classes. Just be yourself. But there's some things we can do. You've seen them before. Anonymous participation, and they're finding this in missionary work as well. Anonymous participation taps into a group of people who would never participate otherwise. And then we need to have the growth mindset instead of the fixed mindset. Just start using the word yet. You don't know how to do that yet. What I'm really trying to do with my first year master students who have seen 30 to 50 hours of clients and they're getting their first couples case, and I'm teaching the couples therapy class, what I say to them over and over again, are you going to allow yourself a developmental perspective to becoming a therapist? And I say probably 6 or 7 times each class, you don't know how to do this yet. You will know how to do this by the time you graduate. I just modeled something. You don't know how to find those words yet, but you'll develop your own words. Using the word yet is very powerful for students. You don't know how to find Learning Suite yet, but you'll learn how, right? For example, it was the 3rd class period, and my only return missionary in the class, so the only person who wasn't 18 or 19, said, can I ask you a question? I said, yes. What is it when it says on the piece of paper, someone's name and then a year? Is that like something we're supposed to read? Yes, yeah, on the syllabus, when there's a date and a name and a reading and a reference, that's what you're supposed to read. And he said, am I supposed to read that before class or after class? And where do I find that reading? It's on Learning Suite. How do you open Learning Suite again? In Lauren Marks' section of the class, someone said, what's a syllabus? That's something if you turned in packets for a year and a half for COVID and didn't really graduate, or maybe graduated, nobody really knows, that's something you don't know how to do. So you say, that's okay, you don't know yet how to navigate Learning Suite, but you'll learn how, and we'll help you. And then you'll start turning your assignments in on time, and that'll be awesome. Okay. Okay, connect with students personally. We'll talk more about that later. Design a class where you speak less. Let me just say something about that in a second. Give many quizzes and multiple points for, many quizzes for multiple points is less intimidating, for smaller points is less intimidating for students. Relevant content, seek assessment. I just asked my class yesterday, here are 3 prompts. What are we doing that you want to keep doing? What should I do less? And what feedback do you have for me about how I'm helping you learn or getting in the way of you learning? And you can put anonymous feedback here, right? Now, I know this is painful and hard, but we can't teach this generation the way we were taught. Just dispensing information is not going to work. First of all, they're not interested, many of them. So when I was talking with Justin Collins about the book, he said, is this going to be too difficult? Is this going to be too difficult for them to access and make sense out of? And I said, Justin, if it's not a podcast or on TikTok, it's too inaccessible. So we're going to have to figure out how to assign this, read it in class, apply it, have 2 activities, and review it if you want them to understand anything out of here. And I'm not saying it's a capacity in terms of intelligence. I'm just saying how they consume information. So we can't just lecture. That's not going to work for that group. It might work great for us. It's not going to work for them. Okay, here's an example. We're teaching the civil rights seminar for the Pacific Islanders right now, and then we go to travel to the islands in April. And we're talking about colonization and indigenous ways of knowing, leading, and learning. So Rick Gill uses Christchurch, New Zealand as the example for the pluses and the minuses, for the atrocities, the oppression, and the liberation and the freedom that comes from the church being involved in New Zealand with the Maori people. Then he puts up on the board everything that we're going to discuss here, whether it's colonization, the family and community orientation, racial biases, the distance geography, is both a blessing and a challenge. And he said to the students at the table, I want you to come up with a blessing and a challenge for each of these. Ready, go. So they start with colonization, which is a topic most people would prefer not to cover. So one student says, what are the losses? And they have them listed. Loss of indigenous knowledge, loss of indigenous ways of being, the oppression of spiritual knowledge. Then one student said, well, there is one blessing. The Maori people have the gospel of Jesus Christ in New Zealand. That was a really interesting discussion we were having, right? So that small group interaction, requiring them to take on difficult issues with a case example and trusting they can handle that conversation. Now, we wouldn't do that with the freshmen, but that's going really well in that class. I wanted to give you an example. Now, I want to say something about belonging outside of the classroom. I got together with all the members of my class that are still here right before this talk to ask for their feedback. And I think 4 of them are on missions. A couple of them are dating people. 3 are working in Bryce's office of first year belonging, first year experience. And one person said, what helped me belong the most was a group chat. And I said, why? Because I always felt I was accountable to someone. If I went missing, someone would reach out to me. They said by far the most important on-campus assignment, the most important assignment of the class was the on-campus assignment to attend 2 events on campus, and you had to attend with someone else from class, and one had to be multicultural. And if you went by yourself, the entire class had to do it over again. And so one person emailed me like Wednesday night, it was due Friday. I didn't go, everyone else went on this day, I couldn't. What do? I don't want to make everyone suffer. You reach out to someone else, you find an event and ask if they'll go. One woman in the class went 4 times to 4 different assignments with people. And I said to her, she had this great one line. I said, thank you, that was really kind. She said, don't thank me, it was fun. I was the one who won. So the requirement of doing things together is important because when you expect it, they'll do it. If you don't, only the most outgoing people will. One thing we tried to teach them is making friends is not a blood type. There's not an RH factor. I'm the wrong type and now I'm screwed. I can't make friends. Everybody can learn how to make friends. And this is what one student said. I learned how to make connections and friends, and I make friends in every class. And I said, what does that mean? She says, that means I meet new people now because it's a habit, and I'm sad whenever a class ends because I'm always leaving a new friend behind. I'm always a little sad. I make friends in every class because I know how to do it. I do it on purpose. So if we can teach them to do that as freshmen, what happens? It changes BYU. The other thing the student said is having great relationships with professors is important. It turns out that going to our homes matters. You can't teach a section of 800 people and do that. But when they're in our homes, it matters to them. Or other non-classroom settings if you can't manage that in your home. They mentioned that specifically. Now this is one of my favorite stories. So it was early in the semester. Kaysen was a student in our class. And he told the story in his final presentation, Porter did, and then I asked him about it at this reunion. I said, Porter, why did it matter that you crashed on Kaysen's couch? He said, well, I never did anything with anyone. And I got invited to this, I can't remember if it was a Halloween party or something, and 4 of us met at Kaysen's house, and we never went to the party. We just stayed talking and watched a movie. And it was like 1 a.m, I had to work the next day early. And I said, dude, can I just crash on your couch? He said, sure, whatever, man, that's totally fine. He said, I knew I belonged when I crashed on Kaysen's couch. That was his definition, right? This is him, and this is his final presentation for class. I just want you to be able to hear what he says.
Takeaway for me was just kind of the aspect of building a community. I feel like this was kind of like an overarching theme during the entire duration of the semester. So I guess that's kind of the theme that I took away, and then within it are like more topics from the class, from specific classes that were important to me. So the first thing when it comes to building a community, stop making excuses. These are some of the common excuses that I make, and this is kind of taken out of the like event project where we had to go to different events. And I think one of the questions was, what excuses do we have to stop making in order to go out and be an active part of the community? So the first one, I'm tired. That means that I probably am tired, but it's because I'm bored. So once I get out and start doing stuff, then I'm not tired anymore. So by being a part of the community, I'm benefiting myself and others, hopefully. And then I'm busy doing homework, means I'm watching Netflix with Learning Suite open. So that one I can work around by being more accountable during the set homework time, and I can create more time for being a part of the community. And then I'm working, means I'm actually working, but with that, I was able to go to, it was the Walk of Life and a volleyball game just by having somebody else pick up my shift. So there are ways to work around the excuses, and by doing so, you can be a part of the community and hopefully add a lot. I know your names. Ashley, Sophie, Becca, Jonas, Bryn, JC, Isaac, Nicole, Josh, Isaac, Matthew, Gracie, Brother Sandberg, Emma, Kaysen. I feel like that was something, a big takeaway from this, because like previous semesters, I've known my maybe 2 kids' names in the classes, and so by having kind of the seminar kind of feel, I've been able to get to know everybody, and I feel like we've built a cool community here.
So the one thing everybody knew about Porter was he worked at Gold Gym and he was ripped. That's all they'd say about him. He was ripped. And so he stood up and he was the first person to go. And the only assignment was share something that's meaningful to you from this class that will change your life. And when he said, I know your name, and he went around to every person, it was like electric. It was electric. And what he was referring to on the assignment, I really had to think differently. The assignment of going to the Walk of Life, the MLK Walk of Life, what I'd like them to do normally is write a paper integrating good articles on oppression. But what I had them do instead is they had to sit as a group and answer 4 questions in video format. And one of the questions was, what excuses do I make that I'm going to have to overcome if I'm going to engage in the community? And that was his answer. I'm doing homework means I'm watching Netflix with Learning Suite open. One of the great bits of honesty I've ever heard in class. But I think what he learned and what the students learned is something Elder Christofferson said in General Conference. Belonging comes from service and sacrifices that we make for one another and for the Lord. Belonging does not come as we wait for it, but as we reach out and help those and one another. But we have to be careful because belonging, like there's a really interesting book, if you have a chance to read it, it'll help you understand this generation. It's called iGen by Jean Twenge. And she did qualitative research and followed 4 longitudinal data sets of high schoolers. And one of the things she found in her qualitative interviews is that college students would say, why do I want to be in a relationship? This is a direct quote. Why do I want to be in a relationship with someone? Because then like when they're having a bad day, that's my bad day. And who needs that? So the idea of sacrificing in service feels to some like a form of oppression. And students tend to call all traumas big T traumas, right? So if you can help them understand the joy of connecting comes from giving, this is another student's version of her final presentation talking about what belonging meant to her.
My presentation is called Building a Community, a Survival Skill, because I have learned that community is definitely one of the most important survival skills that I've learned. So let's start with a story. Last semester, I was at this university called Cal State San Marcos, and it was great, not to bag on it or anything, but it was a commuter school. So I lived at home, I would come to my classes, and then just go back home. And there was no sense of community. I spent 4 months at this university, and I didn't make a single friend. And it was hard to go to my classes. It was hard to succeed overall, like succeed socially, succeed spiritually, succeed mentally, academically. And it was just not a good experience. And I think this is because I did not know how to build a community. Lastly, community is so important because it provides belonging so that everyone has a place on campus and off campus. We learn in church settings that all people are alike and welcome under Christ's law and commandments. And so community helps us to be Christ-like, to reach out to others and to extend our help and our aid and just have those Christ-like attributes. So building a community is essential to belonging. So we've come full circle. The 4 months I've spent at BYU were so much better than the 4 months I spent at Cal State San Marcos because I learned how to build a community. And I look at every single one of you and I'm so grateful for the community that we have in the classroom walls, outside the classroom walls, just everything that we do together helps me succeed academically, mentally, socially, spiritually. I'm a better person because of the community that we've built here and because I'm at BYU. So I'm so thankful for all of you.
Okay, you've been able to hear from two students. What stands out to you? Tell the people at your table what stands out to you from their experience. And I'm talking stands out to you at an emotional level, not just an idea. What stands out to you at an emotional level as you hear them? Ready, go. So I think you can imagine how this matters to everyone. But can you imagine, particularly for our at-risk students, how much this matters? If you're a first-gen student, if you're Pell Grant eligible, if you're an international student, if English isn't your first language, if you don't look blonde, white, and are from Bountiful, right? So, which I'm none of those three. Can you see how much more it'll matter to those folks? Second observation I want to make before we shift to the second part is once I expected it, then they learned how to do it. I didn't have to babysit all semester to get them to connect, but I did have to require it in the first month and show them how to do it. But once they figured that out, they did it because it feels good. So we had our reunion. This is just how they interact now. We have our reunion, and I said, whatever happened to one of our students? And well, she was going on her mission, and she had these intestinal problems. I heard a bunch of you drove several hours to see her. Yeah, we wanted to see how she was doing. And I said, where's so-and-so? And they said, I saw her yesterday. Why is she not here? And one of them said, she said she didn't know about it. And another one said, what kind of excuse is that? I told her about it. She should be here, right? That's the way they see each other. That's the way they treat each other. But if I didn't expect it, it wouldn't have happened. A third student who went to Arizona State for a semester before he came here said, I put my hoodie on, I went to class. He didn't say I never made another friend. He said, I never spoke to another person. Probably one of our more socially awkward kids, probably one of the kids took a long time. But his final presentation was off the charts. And then he kept making sure everyone came to our gathering at the end of the semester because he worked at, I can't remember, Chick-fil-A or something on campus, and you get like $1 in food credit for every hour you work there. And he brought like 27 or 30 of those milk and cookies, and he just wanted to give them to everybody. He was there 30 minutes early, so excited to give the cookies to the other kids, right? And he was not a kid that would have engaged if we didn't require it. Assignments that require connection build connection, okay? So that's belonging to each other. Now I want to talk a little bit about belonging to BYU. We have to teach with passion and the spirit about, and this is so important, the why of BYU. Not the what. We're doing a fine job of teaching the what BYU is. Tithing dollars, so important. The honor code, so important. But we're not teaching the why. So as part of our class, the honor code office came and presented. I didn't know the person's name. It was phenomenal. Most of the presentation was the why. What kind of environment do you want to study in? Like probably 70% of it. And then a little bit at the end about, and these are the standards, and this is, why you want to live them, because it'll be a different kind of spiritual environment. So the person left, I was ready for the buckshot. I said, okay, what did you think? One person had, yeah, it makes sense. That's how I want to study. That's the environment I want to be in. Lots of why, less what, okay? Second thing, you have to teach how they fit into the mission of BYU. You have to forecast what it means to enter, to learn and go forth to serve. So one of the things I try to do in every class is start with the BYU mission statement. It's on your table, okay? I want you to just take 1 minute and just underline one part of the mission statement that you personally find meaningful, okay? Just a part that you find meaningful. Just take a minute and do that. Okay, here's the simple challenge. Next time you teach a class, just start class by saying, can I share something with you I read recently in the mission statement that inspires me? Then give them 2 minutes with the mission statement and say, what inspires you? That's a simple way of helping them locate themselves in the mission statement. So preparing for this, I reread Alfred Kelly's famous vision, where he saw on what was called Temple Hill, legions of students walking up to campus, this is 1912, full of buildings, and they decided not to sell all of this part of campus. So I'm teaching a master's level class. We have several people that I would say are fairly devout members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We have a wonderful student from Jordan who's not a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We have someone from Taiwan who's also not a member. And then we have several disaffiliated students that are trying to figure out, in transition, I think is their phrase. And so I said, hey, I'm giving this talk tomorrow. I read this vision. We put it up on the screen. We read it out loud. So who are those people? I guess they're us. How does that feel that somebody saw you in vision? Student from Taiwan or mainland China? Pretty cool, right? Just help them see themselves as part of the prophecy of BYU, right? Many students understand and believe in our double heritage, and they long to see how the sacred and the secular reinforce each other. That's President Reese's phrase over and over again. We need to help them understand that responsibility. So I taught at Syracuse University for 10 years, loved it. We would have never left. We came kicking and screaming. The last place I ever wanted to live was in Utah Valley for a lot of reasons. And I struggled. I struggled a lot the first year, probably the most depressed year of my life. But when I went to university conference, I can still see myself where I was sitting and all the faculty sang together. And we had a prayer. We weren't doing a lot of praying in Syracuse. I felt the tremendous privilege of being here, and I felt the tremendous responsibility. So we started our civil rights seminar saying this year, do you know how much it's going to cost to get all of you to Hawaii and Samoa? Do you understand how important it is that you become college educated and help other Pacific Islanders become college educated? Do you understand what a privilege it is to study this with Tavana from the athletic department? All these great things we're doing. Can you feel the responsibility and can you feel the privilege? And trying to knit that together for them. That's really important. It's not a burden to be at BYU. Ask anyone who's taught anywhere else and done mandatory summer furloughs and their salary. It's not a burden to be here. We need to help students understand it's a privilege. And we need to help them understand it's not just an inexpensive university. That kind of gets me a little frustrated. It's not just anybody who's counted tithing would never say that. Okay. This section I'm calling I am BYU, we are BYU. This is something that takes a mental shift from them to us. When I was first at Syracuse, I hated it. I tried really hard to go to another university. They gave me a great job offer. I desperately wanted to go. But we felt like we should be in New York. And that year I stopped saying you all, them, and started saying us. And that changed me, right? Help the students say I am BYU. I'll give you one story. I had a student, I didn't find out about this whole story until our reunion. So I know he came to the first week of class and he emailed me and said, my grandfather died, I'm going home to Texas. And then he came back, that's all I know. And he said, I went to the university, I want to quote him because it's so good. I went to the University of Texas, Austin. I never had a friend that was a member of the church unless I reactivated them. I went home after 1 week back to Texas because Utah and BYU are too weird. My parents made me come back. We had a commitment that I would try for 2 more weeks. Then some of my classmates invited me to the Walk of Life on our group chat. That changed things. I started talking to people. I started engaging with them. I love BYU now. There's no place like BYU. I would never say another bad word about it. And I just asked Bryce, he's one of the main front desk guys now at the Office of Freshman Belonging, and you said he's really good at it because?
He can talk to anybody and it helps everybody feel comfortable, like they're welcome.
Yeah. So that's his transformation, which I knew nothing about until after the fact. But his classmates included him. And he now says, our BYU, my BYU. I wouldn't let anyone say anything bad about BYU, right? So he located himself within that. One of the struggles we have is that too many students feel invisible. And one of the gifts we can give is seeing them. So our student who's from Jordan came to class early, was helping me set up tables. And I said, you said the other day that you can't wait till this degree is over. What did you mean by that? Is it the being a therapist? No, I can do that, and I love the classes. She kind of looked around, here. What do you mean by here? Like being here. I just have to leave. Like Utah Valley? Yeah. Why? I know it's probably not true, but I think every person's staring at me. Well, as a Muslim woman, they probably are. And it's hard. I was saying to you, I see you. I see that you're struggling in class, and we need you. And you know what? How much more do you think she participated in that particular class? How much more do you think she was engaged? Probably 4 times as many comments as she normally would. But she had said the first day of class, hi, my name is so-and-so, and I can't wait till this degree's over. I didn't pursue her right there. I didn't pursue her publicly, but I kept it up here. We have to see them. We have to notice them. Okay, my same nephew, I was trying to help him make friends, and I said, okay, club night. What do you like to do? He found his best friends in the Magic the Gathering card game club. And a sword-making club, which I didn't know we had, which I think leads to LARPing, which I'm learning what it is, okay? But I'm going to give you a true story. I'm not making this up at all. One of our daughters, I tried to go on dates with them, wanted to go, I think it's called GameStop. It's down on Center Street, and you can play board games and have very average food, I would say. But I went with her. And so I did it, okay? And I'm a people watcher. And there's this one person sitting over here, and then someone comes in, and I thought it was like Norm from Cheers, because every time the door would open, hey, and I'm not making this, it's the twins! And these 2 guys come in, and this other person comes in, and they're all a little bit odd, and one person fastidiously unpacks their own homemade dinner that no part can touch, right? But they are a community, and they are loud, and they are connected, and it's Magic the Gathering night. And they're like, where did you get that? I think it's called a mat, I'm learning. Where did you get that mat? Is that new? I'm playing with her. They're all arguing, but they have a community. We have clubs for everything. We have clubs for everything. Help students get involved in a club. Help them do something outside of class. Rick Gill told me that one of the strongest predictors of retention for at-risk students who are freshmen is if they have an on-campus job. I said, why is that? And he said, because somebody knows when they're missing and they belong to a team. I've thought a lot about that. I had several students in therapy who were dropping out of their classes, failing. Their parents know they're sleeping all day, up all night. But you know the one thing they do each day? They go to their on-campus job. And I said, why? Well, because they couldn't set up the whatever it was if I'm not there. right? The importance of belonging through campus employment. And then through Why Serve, I'll give you a really good example. Can I have somebody read this? There's a couple microphones. Would somebody just grab a microphone and be willing to read this for us? It's just right behind you there, thanks. I don't know if you can see it.
Not long, is that on?
Yeah, thanks.
Not long ago, a sophomore at BYU found her way to my office. Her demeanour and body language bespoke her sadness, and she lamented that she had failed to become involved or make many friends during her first year in Provo. She concluded saying, "I guess I just need to get outside myself and do something for others." I immediately walked the young woman to the student leadership office. There she was introduced to a genuinely happy and gregarious student volunteer who took her on a tour of the office, explaining the various ways in which students may become involved and serve others. A few days after our visit to the student leadership office, I returned to communicate thanks to the dedicated student volunteer who'd fellowshipped my friend. The volunteer said, with excitement in her voice, "Your friend is here in the office this afternoon." "Where?" I questioned. "Over there." She pointed to a spot perhaps 50 feet from where we stood. I quickly made my way to see my once lonely, unhappy friend, but opted to stay out of sight while within range of her voice. My friend had gotten involved and was giving a tour of the office to 2 freshmen. I heard her say, "I didn't get involved, but kept to myself during my freshman year, and I regret it. You need to get outside yourself and find a way to serve. We can help you."
Thank you so much. I thought that would be a great story, but I didn't know you were reading it, and it made it like 10 times better. So thank you. It was fantastic. So that's a simple example of belonging outside the classroom. And I guess one thing that the class taught me is this is my job. It's not somebody else's job to do all this stuff. And I felt like I was given permission to do it, and it was wonderful. It's making it very hard to teach the ways I used to teach, which was just dispensing information. This is our job. It's not somebody else's job. Okay, last thing, but covenant belonging to Christ. These are some concepts you're going to have to help students wrestle with. When you belong to Christ, it expands your life. It isn't a restriction. And I could spend 15 minutes talking about that. When you belong to Christ, it's because he invited you and you accepted the invitation. It's not a command. When you belong with Christ, he wants things for you. He doesn't want things from you. That's very different. He wants things for you, not things from you. And when you belong to Christ, your why becomes very meaningful. I love the quote that Lord Pearson uses all the time. If you have a big enough why, you can do any what. If you have a big enough why, you can do any what. So this is the why we want to belong to Christ. Entering into a covenant relationship with God binds us to him, not in a restrictive way, remember Elder Gong, but in an expansive way. In a way that makes everything about life easier. And I really try to highlight this to the students: peace, confidence, joy, and rest. Elder Renlund said it this way at University Seminar. I love it. You have more than a job. You help students come to a knowledge of their Redeemer. Your example and choices influence them. So let us cheerfully go forward and do all things that lie in our power to convey, I love this phrase, a Christ-like character and Christ-like attributes, so that all who enter here can sense that the Savior is the Redeemer of their souls. I know that he loves these students, and I know that he loves you. I can manage Christ-like attributes 80% of the time now with students. My character is at about 40%, but I can do the nice things even when I'm seething on the inside. More of my goals is to bring my character along. That's one of my personal goals. Now, I didn't know she'd be here today, and we're not trying to embarrass Lita, but I was going to quote her anyway, so just so you know. One of the things we have to learn how to do is openly share our experiences of and with Christ in normal and natural ways. So when we got back from our mission, I was struggling to find a way to fit in here and not be just like every overly religious returned missionary. So we went to the fall opening social for School of Family Life, for the FHSS, and everyone's talking, and then this person comes in, and like every other sentence was like a real expression of love for Jesus. And hugs everywhere. And Ben Ogles turned to me and said, Lita said the word Jesus in that presentation more than any of the rest of us will say Jesus this year. but she does it in a way that is so warm and so natural. So we're having a serious discussion a year later on belonging. And she says, I'm in the belonging office now. And people ask me all the time, what is belonging? I can't define it for each person. It feels different. So what I say now is belonging feels like Jesus. It's how you feel when you're with him. That's what belonging feels like. And her natural and normal expressions of faith in the Savior are contagious. She's a great example that way. One student said to me, when I came to BYU was the first time I had to learn how to rely on Christ for myself. And then she said, the class helped me simplify that process. I thought that was an interesting line. Like I knew I needed to do it, but the class taught me how to do it. That's what she was saying. I've had some version of this conversation many times with students. It's super sad, it's super painful. So I'll talk to a student, maybe it's one of our missionaries, someone I know from before, and I'll say, what are you studying? What are you doing? I'm in this major, I'm in this class. How's it going? I thought it would be different. What do you mean I thought it would be different? Well, when I thought I'd come to BYU, it would be more, I don't know, like, what examples do you mean? What are you saying? Like I thought maybe we would pray in class. Or I thought maybe we would at least talk about the way that the prophets talk about this subject and not just how it is in our articles. I just thought it would be different. So we taught our first civil rights seminar. We have students from almost our first class this winter, almost from every part of campus. And one student afterwards was really emotional. And this was our welcome class. And I said, what's going on? I don't know, I'm a junior and I've never had a prayer in class. And I said, well, we're going to pray a lot, and we're going to read articles with President Nelson. We read the peacemaking article. If you're going to be a leader among Pacific Islanders, you're going to have to learn how to be a peacemaker. And they said, this is just, what I wanted. I thought it would be different. Okay, last thing I want to say. When we take students to the Deep South on the African American Civil Rights Seminar, we always go to 16th Street Baptist Church. That's where the 4 little girls were killed in the bombing incident while in the Sunday school. It's where when you go down the street, down the steps, across the street is Kelly Ingram Park, where the dogs were unleashed and the fire hoses and Bull Connor and his tank, all that stuff. So it's a very powerful place. It was so deeply touching for me, after having been 5 or 6 times with students, that my family, that I would say is a pretty conservative family, had a family reunion in Georgia, and they asked me if I'd take them on the civil rights tour. So we went as a family. We went to church on Sunday to the 16th Street Baptist Church. We'd only ever been to Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. This is in Birmingham. Dexter Avenue is in Montgomery. And a distinguished older African-American man, a deacon in the church, met us at the front door and said, welcome to 16th Street Baptist Church, where Jesus Christ is the main attraction. So I've thought a lot about that since then, in all aspects of my life. Is Jesus Christ the main attraction of BYU? Or is it just a cheap university or a good place to work with good benefits? Is Jesus Christ the main attraction in my classes? Is he a third-rate side character? Is he mentioned at all? Right, I've thought a lot about that because when he looked at me in the eye, he wasn't saying a line. That's how he lives, right? Okay, so this is the last thing I'll have you do. Will you grab a card at the table and just write down one change you're going to make? Just one thing. If you do more than one, it's probably not going to happen. But if you just take one thing you felt inspired to do in any of these areas, belonging with Christ, belonging to BYU, belonging with other students, in your little slice of BYU. Okay? I'm not going to ask you to share with anyone, just for you. Just write it down. Okay, Chip said we had about 5 minutes for questions, and I'll just say a final thing, then we'll be done. Any questions? And it's fine if there aren't any, but...
What is something that you might suggest for a belonging assignment?
How big is the class?
It's 2 sections of about 240 each.
Okay. I would probably run a semester experiment. I'm not sure it's going to work, and I'm not even sure how you'd track it, but of some kind of attend some event on campus in groups with someone from class. You may have to pre-assign some groups with that big of a group. I mean, someone's going to get lost in 240. Right? I would probably try that. Jessica, what would you add?
Just nodding. I think that's good. How to be accountable to each other. That's what I took from the beginning where you said they were accountable to each other to make sure that everyone found it comfortable in that size.
I think it's really important for them to do something both that's just straight fun. They had a lot of fun at the basketball game, volleyball game, but I do try to assign something multicultural just so they can right out of the gate have an experience with a different language, a different ethnicity, a different racial experience than they grew up with. I think that was helpful to them. International cinema. So I would probably start there. I'd have to think about a big section group, but your name is? Okay, so if you have a good idea, send it to Scott, because that's a good question. Other questions? Yes?
You mentioned that you, after teaching this belonging class, having a hard time with the way you used to teach. Those are the kind of words I gathered from you.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on the things that you are doing now in your teaching that has changed?
Yeah.
That is different from what you did before?
Yeah, so I hope that before I was an active teacher, students were really involved and engaged, but I've spent all of my time thinking about content that needs to be delivered instead of experiences that need to be had. So all my classes are designed around distributing information that's valuable, and I believe that, and then in some way evaluating how they have received that material. And now I think about it instead of what are the experiences they need to have to learn, change, grow, heal, and how do I evaluate that? So I guess maybe faculty-centered versus more student-centered. But I didn't know how to do that. Like, would watch a video in these trainings on how to flip a classroom in this high school in Pennsylvania and how the teacher did it, and a semester-end project they're all working on. I thought, oh, now I can do that. It's not just words. I watched a video of somebody doing it. So I think maybe more student-centered. And I think I'm less concerned about content. Constantly across my time at BYU, I get the feedback. Too many readings, too many topics, and moving too quickly between topics. You probably picked that up today. That's still a struggle for me, but I'm doing less of that, I think. Any other questions? So I'll just end with this. I'm on the University Assessment Committee, and everybody should do that because you'll learn a lot about all the other assignments on campus, and we were discussing yesterday. And one thing was brought up in the meeting that I thought was so helpful. Someone said, well, we could do this going forward if we just believe that was the expectation of the university leadership to do it. If we just decide that's the expectation, then we'll just evaluate it that way from now on. And Rosemary was there, and she said, yes, that's the focus. We have a strategic plan. So for me, what was helpful in discarding old ways of teaching was when they sat down and said, you're a part of a new class and we want you to teach it in a different way. It gave me permission to be different. And that was a gift. That was a real gift. And I'm finding that I enjoy the students more and I enjoy teaching more, doing it in a different way. And so it's perpetuating for me. I don't have to be motivated to do it. I find it so much more rewarding. I pray that we can all find ways to help students belong to each other, that we can help students belong to BYU and be proud of that and grateful for that, and then belong to the Savior in covenant ways that lead to lifelong discipleship. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.